Our third stanza begins on an interesting note. We begin with our if then we continue in the second stanza with the but, the shift. Now, our third stanza brings us back into the present. It says, now, therefore. And this is where the immediacy, we have the future as the focal point for the first two stanzas. The first is an ideal future, a fantasy future. The second stanza is what he's presenting as the real future. This is what's actually in store. The third brings us back into our carpe diem. It says, like, this is why. Here's the now, therefore, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpires at every pore with instant fires. So now, he's saying, now's the time, because first off, you're not old and dead. While the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew. Right? He's saying youth is like the dew in the morning. It's not going to last long. As soon as that sun comes up, it evaporates. And he's saying, like, the sun is coming up. That's the whole point of the poem, is that we don't have enough time. Morning's almost over. And the third line on here, line 35, is where we get really interesting. So now while you're young and while your soul is willing, which is something that hasn't come up before. But if she's being coy, then she is perhaps willing. If she's just rejected him and he's calling it coy, then that changes the way that we have to talk about this situation in this context. But here he's making the claim that she's willing, she's just coy, and she needs to drop the act because her soul is willing, and her soul is on fire with all of this passion. Then we come back. Now, let us sport us while we may. So we put this back into the rhetoric of play, that we've moved into something very casual. Let us sport. And now, again, this repetition of the now. Let us sport like amorous birds of prey. So, carnivorous birds, right? Like hunters. This kind of wild, vicious, unable to tell if it's a hunt, if it's a kill, if it's love, right? This kind of aggressive passion is being invoked here. Rather, at once our time devour than languish in this slow chapped power. He's saying, let's use our time. Let's use our time wisely. Let's not just sit here and suffer. And what he's saying is, we're both sitting here suffering. Let's at least pass the time doing what we want to do, right? And of course, what he wants to do is have sex with her. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness into one ball. Let's become one. And here we have this repetition of the type of imagery that Donne uses with the flea, where he's saying, there's a merging happening through here, that we've got this kind of hybrid creature where the separate entities have come together. Here we get something that's a different version of the same imagery. But when they come together in one ball, they tear their pleasures with rough strife. And again, we have that kind of very aggressive sexual imagery here, with tearing pleasures and rough strife through these iron gates of life that life is the thing that's barring them from living their lives. And we end here with another note on time. Thus, though we cannot make our sun stand still, meaning we can't stop time, uh, the sun being the image of time progressing. It rises in the morning and sets at night, that wherever the sun is in relation to the earth tells us where we are on a timeline. He says, we can't stop the sun, we can't stop time. But what we can do is make him run. We can speed time up. And what he's saying is, if you come have sex with me, we can control time in a way. If you give me what I want, we can at least make time go by faster. Kind of like that adage that time goes by was no, time flies when you're having fun. So here we've got this complicated relationship with the celestial bodies, with how they're interpreted in terms of cosmic time, local time, human time, romantic time, and then earth time, right? Because we've got all of these different kinds of temporalities going on at once, and it's dizzying to think about, which is part of the strength of the poem, that it gives you so much to think about that it's hard to actually work your way through it. So we end on this note of taking control. And in the end here, especially in our final couplet, we've moved out of the accusation into the rhetoric of empowerment, which is another kind of fascinating rhetorical technique, that he's no longer accusing her. At this point, he's not shaming her. That all comes earlier in the poem. Here, he's trying to empower her. So after breaking the woman down in especially in that second stanza, here we've got this attempt to build up. And if you look at the pronouns, we've moved into we. We've moved into plurals in the end with the us. Let us roll all our strength in ball, right? And then we will make him run. So we've got some really interesting pronoun shifts, as well as the this kind of argument that her giving in is actually an empowering move for her.